My son is a marine engineer, and he's graduating from a 4-year program with the Canadian Coast Guard this June. And
Good job, Ty.
He has learned how to run the great big engines that run these icebreakers in a simulation area.
Okay.
They don't teach him it out on the water.
That makes perfect
where
sense.
there's big waves and things happening.
Yeah.
They teach them in a controlled environment. This is what you do when this happens. This is what you do when this happens. Same with the people in the navigation stream. They have a great big simulator, and it simulates different harbors. And they learn to guide the simulator ship in. They don't learn to do it out there where there's real rocks and real issues and other boats moving around.
This is so smart.
So and then now that he's learned it after 4 years, he'll be out on the ships now doing it after learning on simulators.
Perfect. And that's so smart, because you're not in optimal learning when there's all sorts of other things going on, right? So whether it's ourselves or whether it's our dogs, if there are things that are trying to grab our attention, it's really hard to focus on the learning aspect of things. So I often refer to the white room. And this is the jumping off point.
Yes.
So I really want to impress upon people, though, that you don't want to stagnate in the white room. And you do not have to have perfection in the white room before you move out of the white room or before you start adding color to the white room. So the white room is basically just a non-distracting location, right? It might be my kitchen. It might be my hallway. It might be my basement. You know, it's some place that I'm not having to struggle to fight and get my dog's attention. Right. My young puppy in training is in, basically this is the equivalent of putting them in the classroom and sitting them at a desk, right? With like a setup situation where there's not going to be a bunch of distractions, where there's going to be something interesting to do the learning with, etc. So I've got my food, I've got my puppy, and I've got my, I'm in a good mood, I'm ready to train, and everything is set up perfectly for the dog to learn. And this is where I'm starting to teach my skills. So if I go out just like Ty, just like Ty being out there on the ship, he's not going to be having to navigate the ship itself and steer clear of all the waves and whatnot while he's learning how to actually drive the ship.
Right.
I mean, when you learn to ride a horse, you usually get put on the old school nag that is just reliable as all get out. If you got on a bronco, a bucking bronco to try to learn how to ride a horse for the first time, good luck to you.
Or how would you feel if you get on the airplane and said, the pilot announces, "Hi, I'm just learning. I'm learning today."
You know what? I thought you were going to say, if you got on the airplane and the pilot said, "We're picking a random person. Shannon, come on up here and fly the plane
I'm
for us
teach
today."
You. Yeah.
Everybody's lives are in your hands.
Yeah.
Exactly. I'd be excited, but I would also be very terrified.
Right. And people forget this. They have guests come over, and the dog's jumping all over the guests in a state of excitement, and they're yelling off, and the dog has no idea what off means, and they're grabbing at the dog, and that is not a learning environment. That's like the dog flying the airplane for the first time.
Oh, the dog's flying now. I love it.
Now I have a dog flying an airplane. Yes.
And the problem, unfortunately, what happens is the dog either learns to completely ignore that word off because it doesn't mean anything, because it just comes and I don't understand what it means, or it actually gets associated with the wrong behaviors.
Yes.
So now
off means jump.
Yes.
Jump, bark,
exactly.
jump. Yeah.
Because the dogs don't understand. They don't innately know that off means take your front paws and put them on the ground.
Like, how would they know that?
Exactly. We need to teach that.
Yes.
Right? Or keep your front paws on the ground to begin with. We need to teach these things to our dogs. So, in this case, I'm going to set up in the white room, and I am going to teach my dog that off means, jumping off the thing. I'm going to help him understand that first before I add the complexity of now an emotional state where my dog's excited to see a person and wants to greet them. And the potential for them to jump up is so huge in that scenario, right? So I'm going to reinforce not jumping up on other things. I might set up interesting things. I might put a big cookie on the counter, for example, and then I'm going to help my dog be successful in not jumping up for that cookie, right? He knows it's there. I'm not going to hide it. I'm going to say, "Hey, look, I got this big cookie here." I'm going to put it up on the counter, and then I'm going to say to him, "Sit." And I'm going to give him all the rewards in the world. Yeah. All the cookies.
You get all the cookies.
He's going to get lots of reinforcement for walking towards the counter with me and then off, right? So I walk up, I say off, he's not jumping up. I say yes and reward.
Right.
So he starts to think, okay, what's that off? off, and I get a cookie, off, and I get a cookie. Like, that's creating a good, association.
And
right?
I like to teach off with a little stool or maybe an old-timey phone book.
Remember
the old-timey phone books?
So this is like, I'm picturing like yellow pages being about an inch and a half thick, and then white pages being about an inch.
If you live in a big city, yes.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah,
like in Hamilton,
right?
I base everything off the Hamilton old-timey phone book.
Old-timey.
So I'm going to say, I'm going to lure my puppy up and yes and feed them, and then lure my puppy off, yes and feed them.
I love that idea too.
And eventually I'm going to stop feeding them for the up, because that's I don't want to create value for up. I want to create value for off.
Yep.
Off. And so my puppy says, I know what off means. It means to get my feet on the floor and I get treats.
Absolutely.
I've pre-taught that to them.
Got it.
So that when they go to jump up on my mom when she visits, I can say off, and the puppy says, I know what that means.
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly. And I also like to work some of that in too. So I don't like to go right from like the white room scenario and the setup scenario right to, okay, this is real life, and, you know, Great A and Ida is coming over, and go visit Great A and Ida, but be careful not to jump. I would bring in people that aren't novel first, right? So this is the transition. We talk about the white room, but people often get stuck in the white room so long because they're waiting for perfection, or they're waiting for, I don't know. Sometimes I think people just think that the white room process is so much longer than it is. It's not. You know, it's once the dog has a little bit of a basic understanding, right? Now we can start to apply this, but we can start to slowly apply it.
Yes.
So now I'm going to bring in my situation, it's me and Kip in my house. I have extended family that don't live with me, but those would be the next people in line because they're not that novel to my dog. But I'm going to start with Kip. I'm going to say, okay, Kip, I just want you to stand there. Don't say anything to the puppy. All right. And I'm going to do my thing. So I'm going to walk up. I'm going to say off. I might say sit. You know, whatever it is that I want the dog to do in that moment, I'm going to show him now with a situation where, you know, he knows Kip. He probably was just hanging out with Kip a minute ago before I started this little lesson with him. So Kip is not that exciting in this moment, right? Kip's been around.
He's been around. Yeah. He's a weathered man.
So now I'm teaching my puppy that off still means off, even with this extra element of the person. Yes. But of course, if the person was novel, if the person was exciting, that's I always call it the distraction ladder. Right. Yes. So the bottom rung of the ladder is the white room. And then that next rung is my step with Kip, where, you know, now I'm doing this work, walking up to Kip, saying off, rewarding the puppy for not jumping up, getting in lots of rewards, and then moving away, repeating, et cetera, et cetera. That's rung 2. If I were to jump right from the bottom rung to a stranger out on the street, I'm probably at rung 8 with the stranger out on the street, right? I haven't done the steps in between.